My dear sisters and children, today our Mother Church celebrates the feast of Saint Vincent de Paul. He was known as the Apostle of the Poor or Champion of the Poor. Was born in the year 1581 in Paris, in France, in a poor family, poor as well as a farmer's family. And he became priest. After becoming priest, he could see the conditions of the African slaves. These slaves were brought to France to work in the ship, especially to cook in the ship, those who are traveling in the ship. And their condition was so poor, and he felt the need to establish a congregation which is known as the Congregation of the Mission, which we call it the Vincentian Congregation. Our divine retreat centers in different places in India, especially in Pota, Kerala and Muringur, where they run the retreat centers for thousands of people every week. Every week, almost 20 to 25,000 people take part in retreats and various other spiritual activities and studies in their centers. And he not only started the congregation of the mission for priests, he also started the congregation for the lay persons, especially for women, known as the confirmities of the charity, or the ladies of charity, or daughters of charity. Through this congregation, he invited all the lay persons to take part. In South, especially in all the parishes, we have that Vincent de Paul Society run by the lay persons themselves, and they do help poor people, especially in their studies, and children in the orphanage, give them books, give them clothes, and help them to find jobs. All these jobs they do, these Vincentian fathers. And they not only follow the vows. What are the vows we take? Poverty, obedience, and chastity. More than that, they take one more vow known as the vow of stability. Just like the Mother Teresa sisters, other than 3 vows, they take one more vows. What is it? To serve the poorest of the poor, to serve the poorest of the poor. And these people also take the fourth vow, stability, to help the poor. And Saint Vincent de Paul, he was so much loving the poor, and therefore started this congregation, and he collected money through this lay apostolate people. Especially they made the women of the rich people to help the poor come voluntarily and help. And it is at almost 12,000 these African slaves were freed by paying them ransom for them. I mean, paying some money in order to get them released from their slavery. And through this work, he was known as as I said in the beginning, Apostle of the Poor or Champion of the Poor. He tells that when you serve the poor, you don't be afraid to meet the death, because people are afraid of death, thinking that what will happen after our death. Are you? Yes. Yes. So when we are afraid, but he is telling, Saint Vincent de Paul is telling, that those who serve the poor don't have to be afraid of death. And therefore he tells, if you want to meet God, go to the poor. Yes, he is right. When you serve the poor, and then we can see God. That's why Mother Teresa also, he could see God in the poor, and therefore only she was able to do all types of menial works and serve the poor with courage, and she could see Jesus in the poor. And same way, Saint Vincent de Paul also did, and therefore he is the patron for all the spiritual missions. All the missions, he is the patron, and he paid more emphasis in his life. Preaching retreat and praying, and especially he wanted the reformation of the clergy, because clergy sometimes go astray due to worldly attraction and worldly affairs, and therefore he felt the need to reform the church through spiritual directions and retreats and spiritual activities. So let us learn from this great Saint Vincent de Paul, to learn to serve the poor, learn to pray for the clergy, and spiritualize ourselves. And as he said, if you want to meet God, go to whom? Go to the poor and serve the poor. Amen.